Nothing is certain in life except death and the BC government adding more housing taxes.
I'm pretty sure that's how the saying goes, right?
If not, feel free to quote me moving forwards, as this is probably one of the things that I'm most confident in when I'm making predictions about the real estate market here in BC. Surprise, surprise, they've done it again with the introduction of the BC home flipping tax. But what exactly is it? When does it come into effect? Who will it directly impact, and potentially most importantly, what sort of effects will it indirectly have on the rest of the market? I'm covering all that and more in just a second, so don't go anywhere. What's going on, guys? My name's 𝐁𝐨𝐨𝐤 and I'm a local realtor based out of the Surrey and Langley area. If this is your first time on my channel, I make weekly videos pertaining to the BC and Canadian real estate market, as well as showcase community tours across the Lower Mainland. So if that's something you're interested in seeing more of, I suggest you consider subscribing to our channel. And if you're sick of the government adding tax after tax after tax, telling you that it's going to improve housing affordability, then make sure to hit the like button. Do you know what the definition of insanity is? It's doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Sound familiar? Here's a short list of the current taxes in place and what's been added over recent years. Property transfer tax, which is increased due to higher price points. The foreign buyer tax, which was also increased from 15 to 20% prior to the outright 2-year ban, which has just been extended another 2 years. The BC speculation tax, empty homes tax for Vancouver and Toronto. You've got capital gains on applicable sales and GST on new construction. And how's that been working out so far? The only major change we can see in prices on this chart was due to the rapid and relatively significant increase in interest rates back in 2022. But as for the impact of adding taxes, the only people who I can see that benefit from this are the government themselves. But I'm sure they're thinking, hey, maybe this time it'll be different. And voila! The BC home flipping tax was born. So first of all, let's talk about what exactly it is. As of January 1st, 2025, any property that is bought and resold within 2 years will have up to a 20% tax on any profits. The tax rate will be highest for those who own the properties for the shortest periods of time and will decline the longer that the property is owned. The tax rate will be 20% for income earned from properties sold within 365 days of purchase and will decline to 0 between 366 and 730 days. It doesn't matter whether this is your primary residence or a rental property. It applies to both. This is in addition to the capital gains taxes and active business income that is already charged on house flippers. Under the current guidelines, the home flipping tax will be retroactive. So while it doesn't come into effect until the start of 2025, it'll hit purchasers who, for example, bought in March 2023 and then resold in February of 2025. The tax is designed to include several exceptions, especially for individuals who must sell their home within 2 years due to life changes. Those consist of the following: separation or divorce, death, disability or illness, relocation for work, involuntary job loss, change in household membership, whatever that means, personal safety, and insolvency. Additionally, exemptions will be available for those who contribute to the increasing housing supply through construction and real estate development. And if you sell your primary residence within 2 years of purchasing, you may also be able to exclude up to $20,000 when calculating your taxable income. This isn't an exhaustive list of exemptions, and the website states that more information will be provided in the future. What's interesting to note though is how this could affect pre-sale buyers. Imagine you bought a pre-sale 3 years ago and you plan to sell it when it's finally built next year. It was originally unclear whether this tax would be applied to when you wrote the contract or when the home completed. But the government has now clarified that it is from the time that you wrote the contract, which is a huge relief. Why, you might ask? It's important to keep in mind that pre-sale buyers play a major role in making sure new homes are built. Most of the time, builders in BC can't get the financing that they need to start building unless they've already sold out about 60% of the homes in the building. And the way that they get there is often through buyers like this. So these types of buyers are crucial to the process, whether you want to call them investors, speculators, or something else, it really doesn't matter. We need them in order to get new housing supply off the ground. This is the model to fund new construction, and it's probably not going to change whether we like it or not. So what happens to the pre-sale market if you know that the BC government will take 20% of any profit you make when you sell the home right after it's built, and the federal government will take another 50? If you take these investors out of the picture, there will likely be fewer new homes being built. And why is that? Well, people who want to buy a home to live in themselves typically don't want to wait around for 2 to 4 years to move in. They're generally looking to move in much sooner, such as a 2 to 3 month time span. So what do you think would have happened to the pre-sale market if the BC government had decided to go ahead and add that extra 20% tax on any profit based on the completion date rather than the contract date. Keep in mind, the federal government is already taking another 50%. But if you start deterring investors, developers are going to have a hard time finding end users to take their place. And if the numbers don't make sense and there's not enough demand, these developers will go elsewhere where they know they can turn a profit with less risk. Because developers' margins are already thin and they're taking on a ton of risk with every project. We've already seen previous reports showing that government charges in BC and specifically Greater Vancouver account for up to 20% of a new build, if not higher in some circumstances. If you were to add this into the mix, you'd just be asking them to go elsewhere. Not exactly ideal when we're already in a housing crisis and significantly behind on housing starts. For those keeping track, house flipping makes up only 4% of all home sales today, which is a relatively small percentage. Especially when you consider that likely half of these transactions are due to life events like death, divorce, or a job move, all of which would not be subject to the proposed tax. Since its announcement, the BC flipping tax has been criticized by various experts, advocates, and politicians who argue that it's primarily a symbolic action and unlikely to significantly increase housing availability for those in need. But what's new? We should be used to this by now. It's not like it's an election year or anything, right? Tom Davidoff, who is the director at UBC Center for Urban Economics and Real Estate, has shared his skepticism about the tax's impact. He pointed out a similar federal rule introduced in 2023 aimed at taxing profits from house flipping as business income. According to him, this rule has not succeeded in lowering housing costs. What a surprise. Davidoff also mentioned that the proposed flipping tax in BC, regardless of its effectiveness, will likely be a talking point of the NDP government as part of their efforts to make housing more affordable in the province. He also joked that since empty homes don't vote, they make an easy target for taxation. And we all know the government's pretty good at pointing the finger to scapegoats that can't speak for themselves. Additionally, when BC Premier David Eby and Minister of Housing Ravi Kahlon were asked, they admitted they did not have precise numbers on how many homes are currently flipped in BC. They did, however, though, express that the tax is expected to generate over $40 million annually, indicating its substantial potential impact. Now, I'm not exactly sure how they set those expected targets without knowing the numbers, but once again, I'm not surprised. It was stated the hope is that the revenue from this tax would decrease over time, reflecting a decrease in house flipping and an increase in homes available for community members and land for builders. And my favorite part of all is the following statement, which can be found right on the BC government website on the page with information about the flipping tax. The purpose of this tax is to support housing supply, not impede it. The part that I still can't understand is how they think this is going to support housing supply. They're disincentivizing selling to those who don't meet the exemption. What if you decide that you don't like the neighborhood or your neighbors? What if you get sick of the commute to work? Or you thought you'd be working from home for the foreseeable future but get called back into the office? Or maybe you just want more space. Is it really fair to tax these people? Flippers generally aren't holding onto properties for more than a few months or potentially up to a year. So why increase it to 2 years? It just doesn't make sense. On top of that, there's actually a market for these so-called flippers who purchase rundown homes to rehab, renovate, and then bring back a better housing product to the market. So they're actually doing us a service. This generally isn't something that the average family is looking to do, nor do they want to take it on. So while this may not increase the overall housing supply, although sometimes it does if they're adding suites or additional units, it is improving the quality of the supply on the market. And in regards to assignments, whether you're a fan of them or not, they also play a role, and here's something you need to keep in mind. Investors or speculators are getting hit hard with all the other fees and taxes, and this route has already proven to be not as attractive as it was in the past. At the end of the day, you also have to keep in mind that these people are the ones that are taking on all the risk. There's no guarantee that their property will be worth more when it completes than when they purchased it, or that the difference in price will allow them to make a profit upon selling. And this has become extremely apparent at the moment as we're seeing reports of investors losing their deposits as they're unable to close on pre-sales they bought back at the peak in 2021 and early 2022. So right now, they're feeling the pain, but guess what? The units are still going to be built, which is bringing us more housing supply. Another thing I'd like to address is something that I'm not sure the government has fully thought through and could actually harm them as well. That's the fact that the flipping tax could potentially decrease the overall number of home sales. In turn, This would reduce the province's revenue from the property transfer tax, which is expected to bring in more than $2.05 billion in the 2025-2026 fiscal year and is projected to increase in the following years. Now, I'm no genius, but one thing that I do know is that the government doesn't cut spending. So if they lose tax money from one place, they're gonna find another way to get it back. It's a vicious cycle and the outcome is always the same, more taxes. But that's about enough from me. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the matter. Is the new flipping tax going to be the savior of housing affordability that we so desperately need? Or is it just a political move to make it appear as though they're doing something, but they're actually just doing it to win votes? Let me know down in the comments. If you did get any sort of value from this video, all I ask is that you hit the thumbs up button, and if you'd like to see more videos just like this one, I suggest you consider subscribing to our channel. And if you are considering buying or selling in Surrey, Langley, or any of the surrounding cities for that matter, or you just want to talk about real estate, you can click the first link in the description to book a call with me at a time that works best for you. Thanks so much for watching. Before you get out of here, make sure you check out another video on our channel, and we'll see you in the next one.